Welcome to Let's Talk to Animals. My name is Shannon. I'm your friendly neighborhood hostess for the podcast that all species can enjoy together. And as you know, every episode is different. We've been highlighting a little bit pet reincarnation, pet anxiety, pet high sensitivity, and it seemed just a natural fit when I received an email from Pete Campione's press team, and they mentioned his book, Canine Conversations. And it only took me like 2 seconds to realize that Pete would be a perfect fit for our show because he has this deep empathic sensitivity with dogs in particular, and I suspect with all animals, but he fosters these intuitive, deep, whole heart, kindred soul, two-way conversations. And isn't that what we are all about here? So I'm just going to give a very brief introduction to Pete, our guest of honor today. And he's got a canine companion. And of course, if you hear any chirps, I've got my usual sidekick, Miss Petal the cockatiel. And we're very animal friendly here. So you just never know who's going to show up. I'll just give you a little background. I just finished his book, Canine Conversations, and absolutely loved his heart-centered approach to species equality. And I won't say any more about that. I will just let him tell you about it. I love the name of his center, Kindred Souls.
Oddly, the name Kindred Souls sort of just flowed out. Many years ago, I was living in Florida and I was apprenticing as a dog trainer. And I was laying in bed and I was reading a magazine, and there was a contest and they wanted me to write a paragraph. And I had my dog Jake laying there. And so I had to write a little paragraph about my relationship with him. And it just came out of my mouth. I said, Jake is my kindred soul. And as soon as I heard the words, I'm like, kindred soul, kindred soul. That's a lyric. That's the name. That's going to be the name of my school. And it stopped. It was perfect because, frankly, there's no other species on the planet that has this sort of intimate relationship with humans that dogs have maintained this long. So it just fit. It just fit perfectly.
So interesting because I had a very similar experience when I was naming my previous business, and I was just having a casual conversation with somebody, and all of a sudden the name of the business just popped out, and we just feel that heart click, right?
Yep.
It's like we just got a little download.
It feels right. It's an intuitive thing. It's just, maybe that's how writers work, is they just, something just comes and it sparks. Now, because of that, I just carry a pad around, and when I think of something, I write it down really quick so it resonates, and then I know I may not be able to use it now, but I'll use it later. But Kindred Souls was so perfect because of all the dog training school names, nothing encompassed my philosophy and approach the way the word Kindred Souls is, because captures our relationships with canines. There is nothing like it in nature. So it just, and like I said, it fit with the philosophy. It was just perfect.
Wow. It resonated with me as well. I do feel like my Interspecies family is my heart family. They are my kindred souls. And also, I love what you share about carrying a pad and pen around with you. That is one of the foundations that I teach inside Animal Communication Adventure, is what I call noticing practice. And this all stems from one of my favorite poets, Mary Oliver, describing how she liked to go out and wander in the fields. And often she would find herself having to race home because a poem had downloaded, or an idea for a poem had downloaded into her. And she wanted to race home and capture it before it got tired of waiting and went on to somebody else who was more ready to receive it. So having that present moment focus to notice what's right in front of us. And I suspect that is probably one of the keys to your success in training as well, because of course, there's so many different definitions of the word training. And I'd like to start there I don't have too many trainers on Let's Talk to Animals. Your special focus really sings to my heart, especially with your trauma background and an obvious deep empathic streak. And so I'd love to start there. Of course, you've written a book called Canine Conversations. So, in your approach to training, I'd love to hear you share more about what that word means to you and just how you approach it.
Well, oddly enough, I avoid the word training as
It's a
much as
tough one.
possible because to me, it's not training, it's communicating. To me, it's behaviorism. It's not training. Training is so lacking in personality and individuality. Training, I associate with methodologists, people who have one size fits all. That's, everybody do this, everybody do this, everybody do this. And that's not my approach. So I avoid, to me, training is really effective communication. So I would rather just call it effective communication. If you're effectively communicating with the dog, then you're communicating on a level where the dog understands you, you understand the dog, and you're working in synchronicity. It's, you work in tandem. Training sort of involves, it's to me very old style, training where there's, the sergeant and the private, it's very military almost. To me, this is more of an evolving relationship, an evolving communication. So I don't espouse to I don't like labels. I like,
Yeah.
the freedom of communication because in every situation it's going to be different. So training, sort of limits. Training is limiting. Communication is universal. It's way,
And
way more open.
that's the challenge, right? That's the challenge we both face in our work is describing what we do and making it individual while still allowing for some structure.
I avoided the word training in the name of the school. This was actually Kindred Souls Canine Center. It's not Kindred Souls Training Center because training, when you're dealing with dogs who have disabilities, when you're dealing with special needs dogs, when you're dealing with individuals, the behavior comes first. So that's why the concept of a center is inclusion. It's more inclusive for everyone. It's not just, okay, everybody sit, everybody lay down, everybody stay. No, it's way more inclusive of what do you need? What does this dog need? What does this family need to do to speak to this dog? It's again, center involves the philosophy. It's
Absolutely.
more open.
I love the idea of a center. I use the word circle in a similar way, I think, and just the idea of this species equality and mutual respect and coming together and actually learning from and teaching one another by example and with the vulnerability of showing up, recognizing I'm coming here asking for help. I don't know what I'm doing. That's a big deal, especially in today's culture.
It's odd because, people come in and they say, I don't know what I'm doing, which is odd to me because would you buy a car before you learn to drive? Would you buy a house before you looked at it? It's amazing to me that people will take on a living thing and know so little about it before they invite it into their home for what could be many, many years. Now, your cockatiel can live 25 to 30 years. I actually used to do, while I was doing dogs, I was also doing parrot behavior. And I have an Eleanor cockatoo sitting right next to me. So I did bird behavior, but it's a complete different mindset. The brain function is different. So, but again, it's just searching for that pathway to communication. You can have just as much communication with a turtle, but it has to be a turtle talk. You don't treat everything the same. You have to honor the individuality.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Shannon Cutts. I'm an animal sensitive and intuitive, a Reiki master practitioner, and an animal communication teacher with animallovelanguages.com. Some of my areas of specialization include highly sensitive pets, anxious pets, pets in spirit, pet reincarnation, and an exploration of the deep soul contract bond that you share with your pet. For more information about my one-to-one private pet parent sessions for you and your pets, my Reiki and energy balancing sessions for pets, my signature animal communication adventure flagship program for students, and my ongoing animal communication adventure practice circle for students and graduates, you can visit me anytime at animallovelanguages.com. Looking forward to meeting you and your pet, and I send you all my love. Yep. And we have 2 turtles in this family, so you are singing to my heart.
Oh,
So
there you go.
got a red-footed tortoise, and I've got a 3-toed Eastern hybrid box turtle rescue. So
Wow.
we have a standard wire-haired dachshund who has, yes, he's become a real teaching assistant for my animal communication students. So that's been
I've
fun.
worked with Dachshund Rescue for over 20 years.
Well, your very
In
first
fact,
story in your book was about a dachshund.
yes.
It's like, okay, this is my guy.
Yeah, I mean, I had a dog last night named Charlie, and Charlie's a rescue and one of the most brilliant little dachshunds I've ever seen. And very, very bright little dogs, but again, unique. And, even if you have 5 dachshunds in a room, they're all going to be unique entities. This is the thing that I try and get my clients to understand about their dogs, because I get so many people who come in and go, well, my last dog did this. Okay, doesn't matter. But I've had golden retrievers before. It didn't act like this. Doesn't matter. This is a unique entity. This is why research on dogs is so difficult.
Yes.
We infect them the second we touch them. Our influence over them changes who they are. That's why when I deal with dogs, I have to see who's the family, because the family affects who the dog is. The family creates the dog. The dog is a pack animal. The dog comes into this world with the instinct of who is the leader, what are the rules, how do I survive? And how they survive is by knowing the leader and knowing the rules. But they're going to be fluid in each dog. If I'm dealing with a blind dog, the rules are going to be different. If I'm dealing with a dog with PTSD, the rules are going to be different.
Yes.
So, it's honoring the species. I always tell people, do you have brothers or sisters? Yes. Are you like either one of your brother? And 90% of them say no. Then why would you judge this poor dog against your last 5? I'm on right now my 3rd Doberman and my 6th Australian Shepherd. Neither one are like any of their predecessors. And my latest Australian Shepherd is actually the genetic niece of my last Australian Shepherd. Nothing alike. My assistant has her brother. Nothing alike. You honor the individual, just as you do with people. They get the same respect, and they feel that when you communicate. That ease of communication comes from the acknowledgement of that special self that they are. And they can feel that. It's all energy. It's really all energy.
It's so interesting that you share that. Of course, we've had 5 dachshunds in our family to date, and I can attest to the fact that they have been nothing alike. The last 2 have come from the same breed lines. We're talking moon and sun here. Could not be more different. And deep down inside of ourselves, we are all walking around as islands too. And
Right.
many of us carry with us, whether we're aware of it or maybe open enough to share it or not, but we carry the trauma of not being recognized as such. And
Yes.
so a lot of our behavior, it feels like with our animals, is an act of my heart is in the right place, but my head is stuck in the past. My head is saying, but that pattern worked with this other situation over here.
Right.
And we're not present, just like you were sharing as we opened up with your pen and your notebook, being aware of what's coming through, what kind of intuitive guidance, what kind of ideas are coming through in the moment. And you mentioned in your book, so of course, I hope you don't mind me sharing it, but you have a background in trauma. Many
Yeah.
people who are drawn to keep company with animals, and certainly many of my students and me as well, we come from a somewhat of a trauma background to varying degrees and in different ways. It opens our hearts, but our heads don't know how to follow along. So our heart's in the right place, but we don't know what to do with this impulse that we have had to help someone else. And I would imagine that's where you come in.
Well, I always say it starts with the heart and then goes to the head.
Yeah.
Especially when people acquire a dog, they start with their heart and then it goes up to the head. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't know that. For me, I had no idea why I could do what I did until I had, to coin Oprah, an aha moment. There was a movie out many years ago called Buck about the original horse whisperer. But you've seen it.
Seen it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Is that movie not brilliant?
So good.
Okay.
So good.
That was my story. That's when I finally realized why I could do what I did. I never understood it. I always had this confidence around animals and I could always hear things and I always just instinctively knew what to do. And until I saw that movie, it was explained to me. A lot of us who deal with animals are broken, are damaged. And it's almost as though the animals are our way out. They're almost, okay, couldn't fix me, but I can fix them. I understand them. And this puts, especially for me, it puts me in the position of, okay, look, I look at a dog and it's like, I got your back. Okay, now I just got to get your parents to understand what you're saying. But I got it. I get it. And a lot of times they'll look at me and go, "Oh, you know me." And there's just this connection. And I've had it since I was a kid, but it was never clear. You develop as an abused kid, you develop heightened senses of awareness to surroundings. Your sensory is fight or flight. So you have to be aware of a situation like that immediately, assess, diagnose, figure out to avoid the abuse. So I never realized I was doing this. And that's how quickly I was able to then figure out what was going on with an animal because I had been honing this skill to protect myself.
Yeah.
So it just channeled. And then when I saw the movie and I listened to Buck's story, I was like, oh, well, then that's it. Now it makes sense.
Yeah.
It just became clear.
Sure.
I mean, I remember as a kid, my grandmother had a dog. My father would never let me have a dog. I was not allowed a dog. When I grew up in Brooklyn, we were not, no pets. And I was the loneliest kid on the block, but God forbid I should have a pet. But anyway, my grandmother always had a dog. And I remember one particular incident. It was Easter. The whole family was there. Dog had grabbed a bone and was hiding under a table and growling. And all the adults were like, no, I'll do it. No, I'll do it. No, I'll do it. And I was like, the dog's name was Frisky. It was a Springer Spaniel. And I knew the dog. I said, I'll do it. And everybody was like, oh, no, you'll get bit. Oh, no, you'll get bit. And I just ignored them. I went over, I took it out of his mouth. End of story. He knew me. I knew him. And he knew I was not afraid. Our energy matched. Everybody in that room was afraid and working on a different head level. I was working on his level. Yeah. And it just managed. I had dogs when I finally got my first dog. I never understood, and I wrote about that in the book. Joshua, my first dog, I didn't understand. He was the best trained off-leash dog. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just talking to him. I was parenting. I said it. I followed through. He understood. You have to take the time to let them understand. So, like I said, it seemed instinctual to me, and it's the same thing almost when I deal with an autistic child. I had an autistic child in my class, and it was in the middle of class, and the child was having a meltdown, and the mother was beside herself. And she said, no, I have to get him out. And I said, wait, no. And I stopped and I said, wait a minute. And I went over to the child and I said, look at me. And I got him to focus. And he looked at my eyes. And within 5 minutes, I had him looking at a coloring book. You have to make yourself open if somebody's going to let you in. So you got to be open in order for them to be open. And it works with kids, it works with dogs, it works with people. And I think I wear my heart on my sleeve and the dog can feel that. It's like, oh no, I'm not faking it. I'm real. I'm not, and dogs, what I love about dogs is their total honesty. They do not have the part of the brain that is abstract. So they can't have abstract thought, and lying is abstract. That's why when people tell me, well, I just took my dog for a walk and he's still hyperactive. I said, he's being honest. The walk was not enough. He's not lying to you. They can't. So, and I believe through their life with us and their history with us, dogs have evolved. I believe their brain function, that's the only research that I trust is physiological research.
Yes.
And physiologically, they have looked at the brains of dogs now, and they are seeing parts of the brain that did not function before are functioning. And that's because they lived with us. They're evolving with us. So we have to allow for that. That's why what I did 10 years ago in my practice, I'm not doing today. I evolve every day.
Yes.
People will say to me, well, you used to do this. Well, that's yesterday. Different dog, different time. You learn, you grow.
Add skills to your toolkit. I always remind my animal communication students, if any of you are listening to this episode, that we must be honest with the animals, because if we are not honest, they can feel it and they will not trust us and they will not open up. They are capable of withholding and they are capable of protecting themselves. And so even if we're having an off day when we're communicating, it's important to be able to say, I'm sorry, I'm just having a bad day. Can you please just bear with me? Or I'm sorry, I'm really nervous about having this communication conversation, this practice session with you, because I'm afraid I'm going to get it wrong. And just be honest about what we're feeling. Then the animal understands. If we're in physical proximity, I believe our pheromones change. The energetic, chemical messengers that we're sending out change, even if we're at a distance through the quantum field. The sensory signature of honesty is it needs no translation.
No, and I honestly believe also there is a certain empathy and a certain empathic process going on, because the dog can sense, whether it's through smell or whether it's through energy, whether you are faking it or whether you're serious. And you can't do that with an animal. There's no faking it with them, because they're pure honesty. There is no, I love when people say my dog is being stubborn. Stubborn is a concept, and stubborn is a learned behavior. It's not a DNA behavior. It's a learned behavior. Your dog can't be stubborn if you don't let it be stubborn. The thing is, to an extent, you tap into nature, because nature does have a thread when it comes to canines, but then you have to break down into individual and more and more and more until, you're there. Because like I said, dogs have evolved. dogs have come further in their brain function and in what they do. They are losing more and more of that old DNA and creating new DNA. And we have to be conscious of that. If, we bring them into our lives for 15 years. And what's amazing to me is sometimes people will only talk to their dogs an hour a day, 15 minutes a day. They come home from work high. I'm constantly talking to my dogs. It starts from day one. And I guess that's also because of what I do. But my newest dog, Louis, my Doberman, is only 9 months. I'm constantly taking him out in front of my class and saying, okay, Louis doesn't know this. Let me show you how to do this. And the next thing I know, I tell Louis what to do, and he does it. And I'm like, what the hell? Where did you get this from? Where did you get it? He just knows. And this is where that body language, see, dogs are nonverbal. So everything matters to a dog. Visual, sensory, smell, everything. They're non-verbal. There are no words in their head. We teach language. And teaching language is an equation. Instruction, follow through, repetition, consistency equals behavior. So you have to follow that equation. You can't leave something out, or the dog can't learn because they have no words. So they're memorizing as they go. That's their nature. Survivalism in a dog dictates memorize everything. And depending on the kind of dog you have, that's where you get into different brain function.
Well, because it feels like we've tinkered with their DNA, especially with certain purebred breed lines. We've changed their leg length. We've changed their genetic structure. We've emphasized certain traits. We've de-emphasized others, whether we know it or not. We seem fearless about tinkering with canine DNA, even if we don't understand what all the genes do. And then we wonder why this breed of dog doesn't behave like that breed of dog, and why they can't seem to adapt to our expectations and our goals. We've rewired them in a sense.
We did. We not only rewired them, but then we rewired them and then kept rewiring. And unfortunately, as function started to dissipate in dogs, we didn't adapt that function and redirect it. So I get people who bring me huskies, and I've actually heard the phrase, can't you train it not to be so active?
All right.
I'm like, are you kidding me? No. That's like saying, can't you get the spots off of my Dalmatian? Or can't you make my Dachshund shorter? No. You need to know beforehand what you're getting. I always tell people, do you buy your car because it's red, or do you buy the car because it's a good car and fits your needs? That's human arrogance.
And the other thing that really, really gets highlighted for me and I think infuses the passion that I have for teaching animal communication, which is a sensory language. It's our birth language. Yes. It's our original language. It's the language that we possessed before we learned the words and the formulas, as you said, and the codes and the programs for if you put a noun with a verb and an adjective and then another noun, that's called a sentence. And at the end of it, there's something called punctuation, and that can change the emphasis of it. But before we learned any of that, and the adults around us got so excited that we were learning it and encouraged us to forget about our birthright language, we all had this sensory language. And it's really hooked into our fight or flight survival system. And so a lot of times it's a process of waking up. And for me, the word empath translates to mean to feel as if, or to literally to suffer with. And when I look at my cockatiel or my red-footed tortoise, who's supposed to be in the jungles and grasslands of South America, or our dachshund, who's a wire-haired working dog breed. Mom won't listen to this podcast, so I can freely say, what were you thinking? And I look at them and I look around at our artificial world, our artificial lighting, our artificial seasons, our artificial schedules, our crazy little electronic pets that are competing for our attention. And I think, don't you feel the frustration and the confusion of an animal who has millennia of wiring before we were even a gleam in the eye of the primordial soup as Homo sapiens, the prototypes for all of our companion animals were already up and running and doing probably fairly well without us. And now we bring them into our artificial world and expect them to just get it. And it's like, no, they really, really, really don't. So much of the way that we live, our DNA hasn't even caught up yet. Our DNA hasn't even caught up with our technology. We get into stress and anxiety and PTSD and trauma because we feel like we can't cope with our world. Well, then how is our animal supposed to cope?
Well, we've taken a highly social, pack-oriented animal that's very much got a social structure like our own, and then we bring them into our home and we don't allow them to be part of the social structure. Yes. And I think this is why people say to me, your dogs listen so well. It's because they're my family. They're always with me. We move together. Even if it's just, I'm going out to my training building, the dogs come with me. It's a pack. There's a dynamic, and you have to honor that. And a lot of dogs don't. It's kind of like if you played piano and you didn't practice. If you don't keep your communication with your dog consistent and constant, they're going to lose that concept of communication. First, you teach it and you say, hey, look, we're talking here. We're going back and forth. And once you have that, that's opened the door to limitless possibilities. But you have to keep it up. You have to maintain it. And it's funny because in doing that, certain dogs are more prone to communication than others. Your dachshunds, for example, are a highly independent breed. But that's DNA because they are the only terriers, and they're part of the terrier family. They are the only subgroup of dogs that was bred to work, hunt, and kill independently. They do it on their own. Every other sporting dog works with someone, not them. They work on their own. So what does that mean to the human? Well, if I'm going to communicate to that dog, I have to tap into prey drive. I have to tap into what I have to allow that dog to be independent. You don't push a dachshund. You don't push, you nudge. Dachshunds have to think it's their idea. So that's where schmoozing comes in. And I love that. I love their personalities. To me, that's character. I enjoy that. I enjoy a dog that looks at me and goes, yeah, make me. I like that because it's back and forth. It's communication, and it's like we work it out. Yeah, okay. There's no room for emotion as much as there is parenting. I mean, you don't get angry when you teach. You don't get angry when a dog makes a mistake. You fix it. You have to let them know you're supporting, not punishing, because they feel that. There's a difference. Then they're able to take, oh, you wanted this, not that. And it's less offensive. It's more likely to stick if they believe it. That's why when I work with dogs who have severe fear issues, I let the dog make the decision. Are you ready for me yet? Are you ready to come out? Are you ready to do this? I got a kiss last night from a dog who made me cry, from a Malinois who was shut down. I had said to the owner, I said, before that dog leaves here, that dog is going to wag its tail, and that dog's going to give me a kiss. Sure enough, last night the dog graduated, and I'm going to cry now, and the dog wagged its tail and gave me the kiss. And I swear on my mother, I heard the words, thank you.
Of course you did.
I heard the words, thank you. I get it. And it could be me. I don't know, but that's what I hear. The story in my book about Martin. Martin was the reason for the book, because here was this German Shepherd who spent his life in a concentration camp. And after all the work I did, just for no reason, jumped in my lap, knocked my glasses off, showered me with kisses. And all I kept hearing was, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. The owner was in tears. She said that dog has never done that before. And that to me was a proactive communication from the dog. Science will say dogs only do things to get something. That dog got nothing from me. That dog was thanking me. There was nothing that dog got out of that situation. And that's where this whole concept of what I do comes in, because I do believe that their part of the brain that feels is growing. That was proactive communication. That dog wasn't begging for a treat. That dog was saying thank you. That dog came to me. So, and I just find it fascinating. I find it absolutely fascinating. I mean, I am so lucky and blessed to do what I love.
Sure. Yeah, I feel the same way. And I do feel blessed that most of the human animals who cross my path, and maybe you can resonate with this as well, despite some of the frustrating experiences, the majority of human animals who cross my path crave a deeper, closer connection and often crave permission to open up, to feel more, to stop and be more rather than this doing that our culture seems to encourage, this domestication, as Don Miguel Ruiz, one of my mentors, talks about, where we're just achieving more and consuming more. It's like, no, I want to be with my dog because I feel better when we're together. But it's like then making space for it, making time for it, and recognizing what does my dog need in order for it to be a positive experience for both of us. And a lot of times that comes back to recognizing that we don't really understand our wiring. There's a huge part of the new animal communication adventure program that I'm developing that actually talks about the neurobiology of what makes two-way interspecies communication possible. In other words, what do all these bells and whistles do? And I don't know if you find that in your dog communication program, if you find that as well, that humans who come in, maybe who are locked down or emotionally distant or traumatized themselves or judging themselves, or they have been judged by someone else. And why can't you just control your animal? What's wrong with you that you can't train this dog? And they come in and maybe through experiencing the work that you do and seeing a different model of how humans and dogs can cohabitate together, maybe they start to open up as well. I think there was a part in your book where you talk about experiencing, and this is a huge part of my work and is a passion project for me. I call it soul agreements, but I loved how you shared that you had met a dog that you just felt like was an old soul. Like they're a natural teacher. So some of these dogs, maybe they come through and they have trauma, and the job is to drag their human to come and meet you so that they can start to open up. Does that resonate at all? Because I find that sometimes with my students.
When I take a dog from an owner and the dog, say that the owner is having trouble communicating and getting the dog to follow the instruction or to follow their teaching, I take the dog and the dog listens to me on the first time. And the owner looks at me and it's not magic. I said, I was clear. We communicated. I said, look, and this is where I try to empower the students and empower the dog families to understand, don't you see, if your dog will do it with me, think of how much it wants to do it with you. But you're not communicating and getting into the dog's heart and soul so they believe you. The dog believes me. It doesn't believe you yet. And this is where I have to juggle and say, look, the dog needs more from you. He's saying that. You give him more. When a dog does something for me, I'm showing you the possibility of what it can do for you. That's a good thing. People are always like, oh, well, sure, you're the trainer. You go, no, but I'm showing you that this is what your dog can do for you. And I've had many people come to me and say, I am so much happier around my dog now that my dog listens. And of course, that always, brings on the waterworks for me, because I always look at an arc. I look at how a dog comes in and how a dog leaves. And I've had dogs literally hiding under chairs the first week, and at the end, they're walking out, wagging their tail and jumping on everybody. And that's like full circle. But the process is getting the people to understand the dog will tell you what they need. If you listen, the dog tells you, I need this. The dog tells you if you're doing something right. You have to listen. That's part of my job. I've always been able to hear what they need, getting people to look at what they're doing. They're telling you if you're doing it right. The dog will never lie. If you're giving them enough, they're going to give it back to you. If you're not giving them enough, they can't give it back to you. It's got to be equal. It's like playing tennis. You hit the ball to them, they hit it right back.
And it's got to be reassuring for your students, for your human students, to have somebody in their life who can help them simplify what has become, probably in their head, a very complicated problem.
Yeah, and what I find is the relief of and the rewards of that communication, because then they're able to enjoy the dog. Before they communicate, it's this disconnect and this adversarial, almost adversarial quality to their relationship. Yes. And then when somebody leaves and said, it's such a pleasure to I can bring my dog places now. Yeah. He can go with me. I said, well, I always open up by telling people the first night of a class, your dogs are a member of your family and should be able to go anywhere with you that you're invited. Your dog should be able to go. And my job is to get your dog in a position to go with you. And that way you're creating that whole pack, because they are social beings. They're just like us without the words,
Couldn't have said it better. And I love the synergy between the work that I do and the work that you do, because I feel like so many of our animals, definitely our dogs, our cats, our parrots, our turtles, even, we put them in the position of having to learn and memorize as many human words and their approximate meanings as they can to try to communicate with us, because we're not meeting them at least halfway by reconnecting with our sensory language.
Curious, do you feel that intuitiveness is instinctual or learned, or a combination of both? That's what I was just going to say.
It's both. It comes hardwired. I call it the iOS, the intuitive operating system. It's hardwired into our fight or flight. It's like a traffic light system. We've all had vibes, aha moments, hunches, gut instincts. Do that, don't do that. Don't buy that car. Do adopt this dog, whatever it is. It's like an instinct. It's just something that we know. And the way I describe that wiring is it's something that you know that you know. You don't know how you know it. You didn't know it a moment ago. Now you can't unknow it. And nothing your left brain mind says can talk you out of knowing what you know. That's intuition. Right. However, just like any other pattern, just like you so neatly lined out for us, if we don't use it, first of all, we don't recognize what it is.
Right.
And we'll never develop any real interest in developing a relationship with it. And we won't trust it. And then that's why for many of us, it only arises in deep trauma or crisis situations. And it's like, well, something just told me that this child was trapped under a car and I went over and I lifted it somehow. And it's like, but that seems so random, because we don't ever see the smaller, everyday, intuitive, instinctual, sensory, just being able to stand in a room and feel somebody's eyes staring at you, even though they're behind you. Something told us, and when we turn around, we're right. What was that? And getting curious, noticing, wondering, getting curious, keeping notes. So that becomes that structured process of recoding it back into our everyday way of life.
But do you agree that it's also a muscle that needs to be flexed and worked?
Absolutely.
You don't just, because I did a lot of people who just talk to their dogs when they want the dog to do something, or when they really, really want the dog to listen, then they take the time. The rest of the time, the dog is just there.
Yeah, it's like a phone. These have become our new pet. Those of you who are listening to the audio, I just held up my smartphone. I forget because I'm chatting with Pete here on video. But yeah, we've just packed our lives so full as human animals. We behave as if we're not connected to the whole and we really don't belong here. We almost behave like an invasive species when in reality, we are still connected. And you touched on this. Animals, especially dogs, have evolved further and further away from their function as our partners in work, in life. And not so many years ago, landholders were bringing their livestock into their homes with them in the winter to share warmth, to keep them alive because they were so valuable. Now, if we want to keep company with animals, most of us, the only way to really do that is to get a pet.
So by Australian Shepherds, people see them and they see how well behaved they are, and they're highly, highly empathic dogs. These are dogs that work at a distance. Their brains are extremely developed to high-level problem solving. Are they good pets? No, they're not. Dogs to sit around the house all day.
Yeah.
If I didn't have my job, I would not have Dobermans and Australian Shepherds. They are working breeds.
It was the wire-haired dachshund.
Actually, the wire-haired.
Sitting on the couch right now.
I know, but the sense of humor, I'm sorry. I just find it absolutely hilarious because when you tell a dachshund to do something, the first thing they do is look around to see if anybody else can do it. It's like, oh, you're talking to me? You want me to do that? Wait a minute. Is there no? Okay, I guess I have to do it. No one else is here. I love that. I find that character.
It's hilarious.
It's just like who they are.
Yeah.
It's not good or bad. It's just, it's no different than who I am as a person. It's just part of us.
One of my mentors used to describe it as we all just come from different pots of energy.
Exactly.
So when we were chatting before I hit record, you were mentioning that you have actually had experiences, have sought out experiences in addition to your obvious innate ability to communicate telepathically with dogs and other species.
I have a Eleanor cockatoo. She's a rescue. I've had her since she was 13 and we got her 20 years ago. So she's probably 35. Her name is Daphne, and she's being very quiet right now.
Yeah, so is my little one. They must be connected.
Again, to not honor an approach when dealing with a parrot as opposed to a dog, there's a different brain function.
Yeah, totally different.
Parrots are still not domesticated, so you cannot just assume that. And that's, again, human arrogance. We bring them into our home and we expect them to just be what we want them to be. No, it doesn't work that way. But I've dealt with a lot. In fact, when I didn't know, there are certain dogs I've had where I didn't understand something that was going on, and I would call someone like you, and I would say, "All right, what the hell is going on in this one's head?" I will never forget my first experience, and it was with I had mentioned Lydia Hibby, and it was her, and she was reading my dog Jake. And all of a sudden she said to me, well, the first thing he's saying is he wants more cantaloupe. What is that? And I turned white. Who says to anybody with a dog that your dog wants more cantaloupe? Oddest thing in the world to say. But sure enough, the week before, I had left a half a cantaloupe on a coffee table, didn't finish eating it. Jake grabbed it, ate it, and now he was telling her he wants more. So there was no way that came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
No way. Absolutely no way.
And I love that because that's the exact thing that I tell my students is when we're practicing and we're taking notes, because usually it's in real time, we don't want to miss anything. So we have this discipline of taking notes about what the animal is sharing. And I say, be sure to write down the thing that you think is too weird or couldn't possibly be true, or the thing that isn't like all the rest, because chances are that's the good stuff. Yeah.
And the other thing she followed that with is she said, he's tired of being mistaken for a girl. And every time I had brought him out, he was beautiful. So naturally, beautiful dogs, oh, isn't she beautiful? And if I heard it once a day, I heard it 10 times a day. And sure enough, she comes around and she says, he can't stand that. He's tired of being called a girl. And I'm like, okay, I'm hooked now. I'm
Yeah.
hooked. But again, I've always thought it was like the example I gave you before with the dog with the bone. I could just look at his eyes and say, no, he's not going to bother me. He's not gonna hurt me. And he didn't. And
Yeah.
it's very funny. People say, aren't you afraid of getting bit? No, they tell me. They'll tell me if they're too afraid for me to come in, they'll tell me. Otherwise, I've had dogs that have bitten 8 people and they've curled up in my lap.
Yeah.
Doesn't negate the fact that they've bitten 8 people, but they didn't bite me. And it's just something, it's a feeling. And I don't question it. I just accept
That's
it.
good.
You know,
That's good. Once upon a time, sensory language is the only way we had to get our needs met. It was the only way that we had to survive before we learned whatever our birth language was, whatever our original spoken verbal language was. And I find this so fascinating because, yes, you have this innate ability and very key, you're very aware of it and you trust it. That's really important.
Yeah.
However, it also speaks to the fact that this is what I share with my students. I say, we're never too advanced to learn something new. We always want to come with that empty cup and that present moment awareness to learn something new. We're also never too broken to have something to share and something to teach. I often share with my pet parent clients, I say, who else is on your dogs or your cats or your birds' well pet team? We need a team. Typically, we need a variety of experts that we can turn to. It's not to say that we're on the phone or on Zoom with them every week, but just because I'm an animal communicator doesn't mean that I am not going to ask one of my colleagues to talk with my animals. It's not unlike therapy in that way. Sometimes I'm too close to a situation or we're mirroring each other because we have similar stuff, trauma or buttons that we're working through. And so it's beautiful to have that humility that you just expressed to say, well, I'm an expert. This comes very naturally. And yet I feel like in this situation, I could really use an objective input. I could really use some support. And that's something else where I feel like having these group classes, whether it's dog communication or it's animal communication in general, or it's something else. So often when an animal guardian or a pet parent comes to us, they come feeling depleted, isolated, sometimes embarrassed, frustrated, humiliated, judged. And it's like, they don't know that what they're going through is normal if they don't know what you or I now know and have learned. So it's like, it's okay. Yeah, there's trauma. Yeah, there's issues, but we can work on that. It's okay. I'm glad you're here.
But don't you feel that it's part of your job, as I do mine, to build their confidence? Because
sure, absolutely.
Confidence that's leading the dog. The dog knows when you're in charge, when you mean it, when you're honest, when you're confident. And if somebody comes to me and lacks the confidence, I keep telling them, relax, have fun with it, enjoy the dog, build your confidence in working with the dog. The dog will tell you. And I have so much trouble sometimes just getting people to smile.
Sure.
I mean, I get in trouble a lot because I'm from Brooklyn and I have no filter. And I can't tell you how many times I'm trying to I said, would you please have fun with this dog? You look like you have to poop. And, they look at me horrified because I've said that, but it's the truth. Get this grimace.
They hired you for a reason.
Well,
they need to hear it.
Get that grimace off your face and the dog will respond. You think the dog doesn't understand your facial cues? The dog is looking for acceptance. The dog wants to know, did I do it? Did I not do it? And you're a blank slate. You can't do that. And building the owner's confidence, which is what you do also, then translate to more effective communication.
Absolutely. And there are a variety of tools, just like you shared. I'm always adding to my toolkit. I don't do everything exactly the same as I did 3 years ago. It's so interesting you share that because I have an analogy from a few weeks ago. This isn't a dog story, but it's a horse story. And one of my pet parent clients had just brought a new horse into the family and was having some what seemed to be trauma-based behavior issues, and was feeling like she wasn't safe. And one of her questions for the horse was, do you trust me to be a good leader? And whether it's just no filter naturally, or it's just recognizing I am serving as the animal's advocate, maybe the only voice they'll ever have. Right. And I said to her, to be quite honest with you, no, he doesn't, because you don't trust yourself. If you trusted yourself, you wouldn't have asked that question. And he's saying, I know you can be a good leader, but I don't trust you yet. But just like, I've got it in me to be a pretty incredible show partner, I know you have it in you to be a really good leader. And just the fact that you asked that question shows me that you know it too. Right. You are not there yet. And so a lot of times it's building that confidence I love it when one of my clients says, I knew my animal was going to say that, or I know that he's telling me something or she's telling me something, but I just can't figure out what it is. It's not totally dormant anymore, this sensory language, but they don't know what they're experiencing. And that can be something really wonderful to watch somebody.
Well, the reason sometimes that we have an advantage is because we don't have a history with the dog or with the animal. Yeah. Whereas the animal already has history with the owner. So the animal is like, well, I know they're not going to I know they don't mean it. I know but they're taking us at face value. They're taking us as a new, I always look at it as, I'm having a new conversation with your dog right now. So this is the first time we're meeting. So that dog has no reason not to take me seriously. And it's the same with you, that you're walking in with no baggage. A lot of these people that come to us already have the baggage there, and they have to let that baggage go. And look, and to me, that's the beauty of dogs. Dogs are so highly adaptive that you can change and they'll change with you. You just have to have the confidence that you change, they'll change.
And the change typically is so positive that it's like the energy is already trying to flow in that direction.
Yes.
So it's like the change, we're not asking them to change in a negative direction. We're asking them to evolve. That's why for me, I call animal communication the best self-development program I've ever found, because we just don't get taught about all of the other stuff that you and I are talking about today. We don't recognize that we're so much more capable, that we have so many more tools in our toolkit. Nobody's ever pointed them out or taught us to use them. And by the time we get to adulthood, we lack the time and the bandwidth, most of us, to go searching on our own. So when an animal comes into our life, it's like, okay, now I got to drop everything and I got to make an appointment to go see this person, or I got to have a session because now life is really out of control. As one of my mentors said, let's slow down to speed up. Let's just slow down. Let's slow the pace down.
Very good. Yes. Slow down.
Take stuff off the to-do list and we'll just focus on the priorities. And guess what? Everything else, those smaller things that become big things, they just smooth themselves out because we've taken care of the big issue, which really boils down to what is our relationship like with ourselves and with the ones that we love. And if we prioritize that, a lot of the other stuff just works itself out.
Well, I've always found that my own experience, in fact, I tell people, I say, look, you pay me, but the dog is my client.
Yeah.
And I advocate for my client. My client comes first.
Yeah.
And it's almost, I bring my own history into it because I never had that. Yeah. I never had anybody at my back. So it's like, damn, if I'm not going to have that dog's back, no matter what. And, and I tell people sometimes, I said, the only thing standing between that dog being well-behaved is you. And I have to meet halfway and we'll get to the dog. But the dog people just don't listen. They don't listen. The dog, and it's funny, I use parenting a lot.
Yeah.
I'll tell, especially mothers, especially moms, I'll say, wait a minute. You can't tell what this dog needs. You know when your baby is crying, whether that means he's hungry or he pooped his pants. You know when they need snacks. You know when they need to go out. You know this. Mothers, well, you have the tools. Use them.
Yeah.
Take out the words and use them. But everybody has these skills.
That's brilliant. And on that note, we have come to the conclusion. I feel like you and I are kindred souls ourselves, and we could talk
Yes,
about this stuff
yes,
all day long. But
yes.
I do not want to leave today's episode without giving you a chance to share how people can reach out to you. Now, I know you have in-person classes and you've got your book, but lots of people listen to this from all over the world. So please share with everyone listening any way in which they can reach you, maybe receive support for what they're going through with their dogs, and any parting words of encouragement for our listening community.
As far as reaching out to me, I would encourage everybody first to read the book, because the book is going to open your eyes to the
Wonderful.
possibilities. Then you reach out to me and I'll help you get there. But what I try and tell people is, I have nothing up my sleeves. It's not magic.
Yeah.
There is no whispering. There is no special powers. There's instinctual. There's feeling. We all have it. We just have to tap into it. I try and let everybody know it is not magic. It is nature. Okay? Just get in touch with that. Get quiet, listen, but anybody can do it. It's just, and the other thing, I don't skirt people on, yes, it does involve work. You do have to do the work. And I'm not saying it's always easy, but it can be done.
Yes.
And once you get the core of it can be done, grab onto that and run with it.
Fantastic. And it does get easier. It gets more intuitive. It gets more natural. So your website is, and I will put this in the show notes as well, but it's KSK9, and that's the number 9.com. And your book is Canine Conversations. Yes. Our guest today, Pete Campione from Brooklyn, now located in New Jersey. And so honored and delighted that you are able to join us today. This episode is going to be such a blessing to our listening audience. And I so appreciate who you are and the work that you do in the world. For those of you who have found Let's Talk to Animals podcast for the first time, we do episodes every other week. You can find us over at animallovelanguages.com/podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please do take the time to leave 5 stars or leave a short review or reach out to me, Shannon at animallovelanguages.com, and let me know if you have questions about what we talked about today. Please do let me know. These episodes are shaped by your needs and your curiosity, and I love to hear from you. So Pete and I are sending you our gratitude for spending a little bit of your time with us today, and I look forward to welcoming you back in 2 weeks for a fresh new episode. Okay, all my love. Bye for now.